Okay, so welcome to Premium Lesson 19 at the Butcher's. No talho. In Portugal, you'll find the butchers either in the supermarkets or on the high streets. In many places, you may have to take a ticket, tirar uma senha, and wait for your turn. Esperar pela sua vez. And then you'll obviously have to pay in the checkout. You need to know your numbers pretty well for this lesson, so I hope you studied it over the weekend. Watch the video first and try and listen to what you hear. You can try and write down as well what you hear. It's a really good test doing the dictations. So I'm not going to speak too quickly, and I'm going to leave a bit of a pause between each line. So you can either listen and repeat, or listen and write down, or listen, repeat, and write down. Because it also helps if you're writing as you're speaking. So let's see. I'm going to start. Pencils at the ready. Boa tarde. Quero 4 bifes de peru, se faz favor. Mais alguma coisa? Sim. Quero também 6 peitos de frango. Vão inteiros? Pode cortar 3 dos peitos em bifes, se faz favor? Posso. Cortando em bifes. Mais alguma coisa? Sim. Queria também 400 gramas de carne de vaca moída. Mais alguma coisa? Mais nada, obrigada. Acho que chega. Aqui está. Tem de pagar ali na caixa. Obrigada. Breakdown of the dialogue. Quero. So you see here that we're dropping the "eu". We're just saying quero. Quero 4 bifes de peru. Se faz favor. Mais alguma coisa? Também. 6 peitos de frango. Vão inteiros? That was supposed to be a question, wasn't it? And this next phrase, I changed it slightly because I wanted to make sure that it made sense. Pode cortar 3 dos bifes. So dos peitos, sorry. So what I decided to do here was say, can you cut 3 of the breasts into steaks? So can you cut 3 of the breasts into steaks? Because this way you're learning how to say 3 of a particular item. Posso. Cortando os bifes. Queria. So here we've got the I want or I would like again. I did want. We've got this more polite form. 400 gramas. Be careful because this is masculine. 400, not 400. Carne de vaca. Moída. Picada. So you can use either one of these. You can use moída or picada. It's up to you, whichever one you find more easiest to say. Mais nada. Obrigada, obrigado. Aqui tem. Now in English we would say here you go, which is also very strange when we're handing over something to somebody. And in Portuguese they say here you have, like here you have it, if you like. Tenho de pagar ali. You have to pay over there. Na caixa. At the checkout. So we're going to move on to nouns and articles. So let's just go through these for the pronunciation purposes. Oh, we've got quite a long list here, I think. So we're going to start off with the feminine. A carne. A carne de vaca. A carne de porco. As costeletas. A carne moída. A fatia. A cenoura. A cebola. A couve. A couve-flor. A maçã. Now be careful with this one. This C is going to sound like an S. And this A is going to sound like Maçã. It's almost like a Londoner saying, maçã, are you okay, maçã? So, a maçã. A pera. As bananas. A abóbora. Now note that we're running the A's into each other here. A abóbora, a abóbora. When I started off, I started singling out the beginning, the word for the article. So I was saying a carne de vaca. But what we're going to generally do is we're going to attach this to a carne de vaca, a carne de porco, a carne moída, a fatia, a cenoura, a cebola. So you're going to really, towards the end, I started attaching them more to the noun. This is more how we speak. We don't have that word so separate, you know. So for example, looking over here, the masculine, we're going to have o peru. But when we say it, we're going to say o peru. O peito de frango. O grama. O queijo. O fiambre. O feijão verde. O alho. O pimento. O pepino. O tomate. Now note that beef doesn't mean steak in the same sense of a juicy rump steak in English. It simply means a slice of meat, like a turkey steak, a pork steak, or even a tuna steak. And you can even get like chicken steaks, because you can cut the actual breasts into steaks as well. So don't forget that. So a steak is not always a beef steak. Here's another reminder. When asking for things, you can simply use quero or queria. Now, try not to think of it as I will have. We don't do this in Portuguese. We keep it simple. So we're not going to say I will have. If you're trying to make a sentence and then you're thinking I will, well, what's the word for will in Portuguese? And then the word for have. And it just doesn't translate the same way into Portuguese. We just simply say quero or queria. So I want or I would like. So let's take a look. Quero 2 peitos de frango, se faz favor. I want 2 chicken breasts, please. Perfectly normal. Queria 600 gramas de carne de vaca moída, se faz favor. Again, it's perfectly okay. And note that we're dropping the AO form here because we don't need it. Now the word written in italics can be changed to anything you want. So if you want something different in the meat section, you can ask for the actual meat that you would like. And a lot of the times the meats are going to be labeled, so you'll see normally written on them what pieces they are. It's kind of like a 3D dictionary. So imagine if you just want 2 apples, for example. You can say, quero 2 maçãs. And if you want a cucumber, queria pepino. So we're always using the word quero and queria. We're just changing the noun. Here are some useful phrases. Now the butchers here will prepare and cut the meat if you ask nicely. I always get them to remove the skin from the chicken. So here are some useful phrases or requests that you might have. Pode. Pode, when used like a question, is going to mean can you. Pode tirar a pele, se faz favor. Can you remove the skin? Pode cortar em pedaços, se faz favor. Now, be careful when you're asking for chicken, because if you tell them to cut it in pieces, sometimes they cut it in a lot of pieces with like an axe. So you could either say, pode cortar ao meio, can you cut it in half or down the middle? Or pode cortar em quatro pedaços. I normally ask them to cut my chicken into 4 pieces. Now this is something that they might be able to do with the larger pieces like leg, but not all of them will do this. Pode tirar o osso, remove the bone. So like I say, not all of them can do that. So imagine if you're asking them to do everything. So you might say, it could be like a turkey leg, for example. Pode cortar em 4 pedaços, tirar a pele e tirar o osso, se faz favor. But like I say, taking out the bone, that might depend from butcher to butcher. Now what you could do with this as well, you see we've got quero and we've got queria. This is the verb querer. This is the verb poder. They are both ER verbs. So in a sense, you can do a similar thing to what we've done here. Queria. Instead of saying pode, you could always say podia. Podia tirar a pele, se faz favor. Podia cortar em pedaços, se faz favor. Podia cortar ao meio. Podia cortar em 4 pedaços. Podia tirar o osso. So I'm going to write that for you here. So an alternative to pode would be podia. So you can try substituting pode with podia in all the phrases above, like I just did. And pode is translating as can you, because we're asking a question. It's supposed to be a, oh dear, got the cap locks on. This is annoying. Okay, so there you go. It's amazing how long it can take to do something sometimes. So this is going to be can you, yeah, and would is going to be more could you. So I wanted to actually do a few dots because when we're asking for something to be done, we're going to need room for whatever we'd like doing. So pode can change to podia, and it's going to be a less, some see it as a more friendly approach. So instead of saying pode cortar em 4 pedaços, you could say podia cortar em 4 pedaços, which would translate as could you. I'm going to take that off bold. I just thought I'd say that. So let's take a look at some pesos e medidas, weights and measures. Sometimes I have trouble speaking English. So let's take a look. O quilo, o grama, meio frango, meio queijo, meio quilo de feijão verde, 500 gramas de maçãs, inteiro, inteiros, inteira, inteiras. So this means whole. So if you say frango inteiro, you're asking for a whole chicken. If you say 2 frangos inteiros, you're asking for 2 whole chickens. So you might want a leg of lamb. Some people will opt to cut the leg. Sometimes they will do this in certain butchers, not all of them. So you could say uma perna inteira, a whole leg. Queijo inteiro, a whole cheese. Quarto, that's going to mean a quarter, and it can also mean a bedroom. Like I suppose the Old English word for bedrooms used to be quarters. The servants' quarters. Três quartos, 3/4. So we can take a look now at the charcuteria, the cold meat and cheese section. The word for slice is fatia. Fatia. And it's a feminine noun, so it's a fatia. And a fatia can be used for anything that can be sliced, like cake, cold meats, cheese, bread. You wouldn't really say a slice of meat, uma fatia de carne, but you would for certain other things, like ham. Quero 12 fatias de fiambre. Quero 10 fatias de queijo. Fatias grossas ou finas? Fino, fina. Finos, finas. Now, fino means thin or fine, and the word for thick is grosso. Grosso or grossa. Grossos, grossas. So you can see that we've got plurals here. So when we're talking about fatias, we're going to use the plural grossas or finas, because the noun here is plural. Mais fino. So if you see that they're cutting something, but it's not quite as fine as you'd like it, you can say mais fino. Mais grosso, thicker. Now, one thing that they sometimes say is, I'll write this down as well, is dedo. No, it's not like that. It's dedo. Now, dedo is a finger. So what you mean there is like the width of a finger. The width of a finger, that kind of thickness. So if you're cutting steaks, for example, then you might say cortar, and they might say grosso fin, and you can say dedo, like the thickness of your finger. Pouco mais grosso. Pouco mais fino. So if you're not a meat eater, you might prefer fish. The fish markets are very popular in Portugal, and they will actually prepare the fish for you. You can also buy your vegetables, legumes, cheese, queijo, homemade bread, pão caseiro, free-range eggs, ovos caseiros, and honey, mel. And many of these products will be regional in the markets. Here are some useful requests you can make when you're buying fish. So like we said earlier, pod, we can change this to podia. Pode limpar e cortar o peixe, se faz favor. So this would be, just actually cleaning the fish and cutting it so that you've got it all prepared. Pode tirar a cabeça. In some places they'll leave the head on, but if you don't want it on, you can say pode tirar a cabeça. Pode filetar. Can you fillet the fish? Pode filetar. Pode tirar a espinha. So in fish, we don't have bones, we don't have ossos, we have espinhas. Pode tirar as espinhas. Pode tirar as escamas. Now, if you wanted some fish without any bones, peixe sem espinhas. You don't get many fish without any bones, but you get some that have fewer bones. So now let's say a phrase mixing that up a little bit. Pode limpar o peixe, se faz favor, tirar a cabeça e cortar em filetas? Pode limpar o peixe, se faz favor, tirar a cabeça e cortar em filetas? So as I explained, for animals, other animals, it's going to be ossos. For fish, it's going to be espinhas. At the checkout, na caixa. Now, at the checkout in most Portuguese supermarkets, you're going to be asked a series of questions. Many of the supermarkets have discount cards, and you'll be asked if you have one, along with a few other questions. So, na caixa. So, question 1. Tem cartão X? So, for example, you have cartão Pingo Doce, you have cartão Continente, and you have cartão, what are the other ones? Intermarché. Lidl and the other supermarkets don't really have cards, but they have apps. A lot of them are opting for the apps now, but they still will ask you if you have a card. So imagine you're in Pingo Doce and they say, tem cartão Pingo Doce? And then the next question will be, quer fatura com número de contribuinte? So the número de contribuinte is your NIF number, your fiscal number. And you will be asked this often in supermarkets, but you do not have to give this if you don't want to. This is just if you need it for your accounting, for example. And then the other question will be, quer saco? Do you want a bag? So how are you going to answer these? So let's see how to answer. So number 1, A. Tem cartão Pingo Doce, for example. So if you don't have one, you're going to say não, não tenho cartão. Or just não, não tenho. If you do have one, you say tenho sim. So if you're asked if you want your fiscal number on the receipt, they're going to say quer fatura com número de contribuinte. And if the answer is no, you simply say não quero, obrigado, or não quero, obrigada. If the answer is yes, then you say quero, obrigada. And of course, you're going to have to be able to say the number. So the final question, quer saco? If the answer is no, simply say não quero, não. If the answer is yes, simply say quero sim. Now, you don't always have to use se faz favor or por favor in this case, but you can if you like. Quero, se faz favor. We answer questions in the affirmative. More about that later on. I'm saying week 6 because that's what it was really. But I've changed these into daily lessons, so I'm not so much thinking of them by the weeks, but by the day. So questions you may need to ask. Some questions that are always good to ask. These days, most places will accept cards, but some restaurants don't. So it's always a good idea to ask first or to look for the sign that says, aceitam-se cartões. Now, you might see this in the shop, in the window, you might see it on the menu, but sometimes you won't see it, and it's always good to check first. So when you go in, you can say, posso pagar com cartão? Can I pay with my card? Or, aceitam cartões multibanco? Do you accept bank cards? Aceitam pagamentos com cartão? Do you accept card payments? So if they do, they're going to say, aceitamos sim. And if they don't, não, não aceitamos. So when you're actually going to make a payment, they're going to give you the following instructions. They're going to say, pode colocar aqui o cartão, inserir o PIN, confirmar e carregar OK. It basically works the same as any other payment. So you can place your card here, insert the PIN, and confirm and press OK. A fatura is going to be an official receipt, which would be used for accounting purposes. O talão is going to be the till receipt. And often o recibo is also the till receipt. Pronunciation. Por. This was the verb of the day in lesson 9. Now the word poignant comes to mind when I hear this word. We can take the poin sound and we use it to help us pronounce the various conjugations of this verb. So let's try poin, poin, the word poignant. Say poignant, poin. Eu ponho. So it's like you're saying poin and nu, ponho. Tu pões. Ele põe. Nós pomos. Eles põem. You can really hear that poin sound there. So even though there's no Y in the above word, we seem to hear this sound twice. And this sound, it makes this sound perfect actually for pronouncing this verb. So, eu ponho. You see? Ponho. It's like we're saying you at the end there. Eu ponho. Tu pões. Tu pões. The letter H, so this is bringing us back to the letter H. We see the letter H in this word too. So we're seeing that it's got this ñ sound there. But at the beginning of a word, it's going to be silent. So we're going to say hotel, hospital. When we see it next to the C, we combine the C and the H to make the sound sh, not ch. Sh. Chá. Chaves. So we see it next to the N, like we did above, where it makes the Y sound that sounds like ñ. And it's a little like the I and the N in the word onion. Onion. Can you hear that? Onion. We don't say onion, we say onion. So let's try this. Vinho. That's like we're saying V and nu together. Vinho. Banho. Minha. You've got to have that Y sound in there. So it's not vino or mina. It's vinho, banho, minha. Then we have the L sound. L. Now this sounds like the Li in the word millions. So we don't say millions, we say millions. So let's try this one out. Filho, filha, trilho. And we're back to the verb of the day. So the verb of the day today is queria, but in the imperfect past. So let's take a look. Eu queria. Tu querias. Ele queria. Nós queríamos. Eles queriam. The thing here that you might notice is eu and ele are the same. So sometimes we might have to use the eu when we're not sure which person is being spoken about. And the ele or the ella also to make sure we get the right context. But it makes it easier because we only have that one to learn, you know? Okay, so don't forget that the feminine and the masculine exist. And I know it's hard to remember, but it's going to make what you say much more clearer to the listener. So when you can get your adjectives aligned with the correct gender, it's going to make more sense to the Portuguese ear. If you mix these up, it can be a little confusing for the Portuguese. So it's always good to try and really learn the genders of the words because you're going to need it later. If you're unsure about kutsamit, you can click here and take a look at this particular item here. And you can find all about the cuts of meat there. Don't forget to take the quiz. The quiz is an essential part of the lessons, and it's always good for revising what you've studied. You can always go back to these. You can always bookmark them, and you can always go back to them and repeat them as often as you like. Okay then, so let's take it easy now because the lesson's finished, and I will see you tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching. And incidentally, if you know somebody who's learning Portuguese, don't forget to share this platform with them and let them know that I am giving these intensive, extensive Portuguese lessons because it's very good value for money. And also, the best is yet to come. We're only on lesson 19. We've still got another 16 or 17 to come, so hang in there. Thank you very much for listening and see you tomorrow.